thanks so much for coming. We are at the beautiful Aviation State High. A big thanks to Aviation State High for hosting it here in Brisbane. For those of you, the team that could come in person. I will start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, which is the Turrbal people here at Aviation High, as is appropriate to pay our respects to the elders past, present and future. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and be sharing what we're doing with the new syllabus materials with everyone. I want to start by sort of saying that we actually have a little surprise that is kind of last minute. There's a few things that were last minute. I'm grateful that everyone was able to get the Zoom link and get here because that sort of went out later this afternoon than I was hoping it would. So well done everyone for coming on. I'm hoping that I was just talking while I was sort of scrambling to a couple of people at Quilpie State College, and I'm hoping that they've joined in with us now, hoping that made us. But yeah, if you want to share your slides there, Erin, just to start off with. So this is obviously the event that you've all joined, but I've got my email there. Many of you know it already, but the reason that I wanted to include that is you've all now got access. Every attendee has access to our new 2025 edition 11 Mathematical Methods book. So if you already have Mathspace, whether you have sort of a trial account or whether you have an account at your school, if you go into your bookshelf now, you'll be able to go through and have a really good look at what we've done. Now, it is still in its draft state, but we're really happy with the content that's there. So I'd love for everyone to kind of have a really good look at that. If you don't yet have a Mathspace account, that's why I wanted to include my email address, because I'm more than happy to obviously set you up with a trial so that you can also have access to that 2025 Year 11 Methods book and basically go through, have a look at the questions and so on. The main thing that as we go through and focus on will be the quality and the level of the questions and the alignment to the syllabus. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce Erin Gallagher, who is here with me. She is our head of curriculum and does an amazing job creating all of the resources for Mathspace. She's also got an amazing team, but Erin has been in education for over 20 years. She spent a lot of time in Canberra, was the president of the Canberra Mathematical Association down there. She's done uni lecturing. She's done high school head of maths. She's done primary. She's done pretty much everything there is that you could throw the book at. So it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Erin. Thank you this afternoon for coming along, Erin, to aviation.
No, thank you. My pleasure. I'm very excited to show off the materials that my team and I have put together for the Queensland senior secondary stuff. So, and while we're talking about that, I might just mention a little bit about my team. So Mathspace is still a relatively small company, so we run pretty lean and we've got some amazing staff. So amongst the team of writers that have been contributing to our senior secondary work, we've got people who have been over on a tour of Vietnam doing specialist training on how to teach the specialist courses. We've got people who have written, marked and reviewed high-stakes tests from all around the country, but including Queensland. We've got people who have been heads of faculties, deputy principals, who have taught maths for over 20 years, and who are leaders in their sort of districts and schools for leading education in very passionate ways. So the ethos at Mathspace, if I can just skip to that, is that we do believe that every student can excel at mathematics with the right help at the right time. So we're really passionate about making sure that the people that we have believe in that, and that comes through everything that we write. It comes through the questions, it comes through the lessons, the way that we scaffold the learning, the way that we structure the books. We want to make sure that students have a chance, because we do believe that every student can if they're given that chance and opportunity and the right resources.
And that's definitely a big thing that drew me to Mathspace and hopefully drawing all of you to have a look at Mathspace, and certainly the team here at Aviation as well. It's a big part of what we do. So we're going to go through and have a look at, there's going to be some more interactive polls. So this is where we actually wanted to start with the presentation. We've done a few interactive polls already, but you guys can all join in with this one as well if you want, just to get a feel of the room. If you get your mobile phones out, you can sort of have a quick poll there. those of you online have got good practice with this now with the polls that Dan ran already. So yeah, with the new syllabus that's coming out, just sort of how familiar are we with it there? I know that, you know, in general, sort of broad strokes, there's a lot of similarities with the current syllabus. But
I can tell you that I am definitely dreaming in syllabus dot points, but that should be expected with what I'm doing at the moment for work.
yeah. Yeah. How many nights would you say you wake up sort of dreaming about?
I wake up often. I've got a terrible sleep routine now where at about 4 o'clock most mornings, I'll wake up with something, which is an answer to something I was pondering the day before. I'm like, oh, that's how I should do that. That's what we should do. And so, yeah, straight back in revising something.
Never switching off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, well, I mean, I feel like that's where you get your answers.
Yeah.
You've got a chance for your brain to rest.
That's right. How many, oh, it looks like pretty much everyone is on the same page here, which is not surprising, because that's kind of, as I said, like we know that there's a lot of similar brush strokes between the two. We haven't implemented it yet, and that's kind of the point of this session, is to kind of go deeper into that. So that's great. How many people are actually in there? Okay, cool. All right, well, hopefully everyone's had a chance to answer that. So let's dive in.
Yeah,
I'll hand it to you for this bit.
So broadly speaking, what we want to chat about today is just to, I suppose, touch on and extend hopefully your knowledge on the syllabus changes. So there's a little bit more familiarity there, but specifically about how at Mathspace we've decided to handle that. So how we've structured our textbook in really familiar and expected ways, so that once you learn the Mathspace way, you'll know that that's how all our books operate. So there's a real expected structure to that. And that can be really useful when you're looking at how do I plan, how do I unit plan, how many hours do I need, what do I do in what lessons? So we try and make sure that we are also a really good resource for the teacher to make things as easy as possible. And that's because we're all ex-teachers. So and we will make that as easy as possible. And then also we want to showcase that we'll demonstrate all of the lessons and questions that we've got through our digital content, but we'll be able to make parallels with and explain to you what exactly will be in the print books as well. All right, let's jump in. So because most people are sort of aware of sort of what's going on, I just put together this bit of a visual. So this is on the left is the old course and on the right is the new course. So all you can see is a bit of colours, and that's kind of all you need to sort of really focus on for now. The red things are actually where topics have been dropped out. So you'll see a few things that have dropped out there, especially in the Unit 1 for methods there, Unit 1 for specialist as well. Some stuff has been dropped out altogether. Then we've got the other things are a bit of blue lines where things have sort of moved from one place to the other. You'll see that the most amount of changes happened in methods, but not a great deal between units, and certainly not a great deal across the bridge between 11 and 12. So they're the red ones that I've told you about. They're the things that have sort of been dropped out altogether. So we've got the sequences and series and things like that, a couple of the specialist units. We've got things that have been added, which are those purple ones, so not much, mostly in specialists. They've switched out a few new topics there. And then that's the area of sort of change where things are in a different order now. So in terms of, the fine grained detail of what's in and what's out, there's really not a lot of difference. So it's really about just knowing what is in the particular units in the order that they'll be structured. Now, of course, that matters because you've got to make sure that you're aligning to your unit plans for 1, 2, and then your high stakes 3, 4. So on that too, obviously we've got a lot of knowledge within myself and the team about specific, like little tiny nitty gritty stuff. So if you've got something that's sort of really on top of your mind around stuff or a particular topic or unit that you're interested in, do sort of throw that in the question chat and we'll do our best to answer that today. And if not, I can look it up on my handy dandy spreadsheet at home and get back to you. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit around what we've changed from our 2020 edition. So Mathspace actually did do 2020 digital products for all of the senior courses in all of the states. And what we did, because we were only digital then, we only did textbooks for the first time last year, was put together the units sort of so that you had a digital offering. We had lessons and sets of questions, and then of course our practice questions. What we've learned from the 2020 digital product is we've been able to spend a lot more time getting to know the intricacies and details that are unique to each of the states. So we know, for example, specific language that Victoria likes to use in their stats units. We sort of know the particular formula presentation that Queensland likes to use. So we've been able to make sure that we apply all of that. So this particular series of books that we're writing now is being written, I would say 50% from scratch and 50% using previous resources that we had. Of course, if we've got a good bank of questions, we'll reuse those. But certainly the structure has been from scratch for Queensland. So that's really important to know. So the things that we've been working on are making sure that our lessons are more formal in terms of hitting that senior secondary market. When we're in the digital landscape, we really focused on being friendly, because it was sort of like this digital product, and it was at a time where it was pretty new for a lot of senior schools to be switching to digital products. So we tried to make that interaction and the way that we spoke through our lessons quite informal. So a lot of, oh, we'll see, and let's do this now. But now, because we're moving to a print structure, we've gone much more formal. So you'll see that it's comparative with the likes of Cambridge and Jacaranda and the like. So that formality has stepped up to keep in line with keeping the mathematics formal, but also we've tried to make it really succinct. So we don't want to lose students through a barrage of highly literate pages of text that they can't get through. So we're keeping it really succinct. We've added in a whole heap of what we call explorations. We'll demo some of those. They are really great, like 15-minute sort of openers that you can use at the start of the lesson. So some of them are static. So they're kind of suggestions for teachers about questions or conversations you can have to get students thinking about what you're about to teach. And some of them are digital. So they'll be like GeoGebras. Oh, let's have a play with this. What happens when we move that slide? Or what's the effect on the graph? Or what's the effect on the probability as we roll more things? So there's a lot of sort of very simple things there that we can do to get students into the mind frame of what we're about to talk about. As I mentioned before, completely aligned to the Queensland curriculum. We're making sure that we use all the right language, the cognitive verbs, all of the correct formula presentations, and that our book is completely structured in complete alignment with the Queensland syllabus. We'll talk about the question sets in a second as well.
Yeah, and I will just say on that, as people are kind of aware, if you're using the version 9 content, I think there was a big step up from our 2020 editions to our version 9, just in the visual appeal of it, and the explorations and all those things. So we're just carrying that through into the senior space.
Yeah.
Because we've had such good feedback on all of those things. I think it's great for the kids. I think it's clean. It's not sort of too overwhelming. It's not too cluttered. But yeah, I think the team's done a really good job, as you know, of doing that kind of stuff with version 9. And so the key thing, I think what took a lot of sort of review was definitely the classification of questions, which we'll talk about more, and the cognitive verbs. That's something that's distinct to Queensland.
Both of those things.
Both of those things are very distinct. And so that's why most of the time we look at other sort of textbook providers as well, and we don't ever get that proper alignment. So right from the get-go with this project, it was like, let's make sure that this is a resource for Queensland first and foremost.
Yeah. I might add, I did my high school when I was actually in high school in Maleny. So like I'm a Queenslander at heart. Alex said to me last night, it's like you're sort of born to teach in Queensland. It's like you've got this Queensland ethos behind you. I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of there.
well, something I won't name names, but if I was to say, like, in general, I taught senior. There's a particular resource that we tend to say is kind of just like pitched lower, and there's another resource that's pitched higher. And typically most Queensland teachers go, well, our exams are really in the middle of the two. So the debate always becomes, well, we want to prepare them as much as possible. So we pick the higher one, or that's just like way above and beyond what our kids need. So we pick the lower one and then try and scaffold up. I personally, it's a personal thing, but I do believe that Mathspace is like in that sweet spot. I think in terms of our senior resources. So that's something
we want to be the right help at the right time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Do you want to do this one?
Yeah.
All right,
so
let's do this one.
Yeah. And more polls. I know that Dan said in the chat before, more polls. Yeah. This is a fun one. full disclosure, AI helped me write these questions and make them fun. So AI suggested, rather than just asking for your feelings on the senior maths syllabus, let's see if it was a food, what would it be? So now that we've kind of like opened the conversation, we've introduced the syllabus, we've talked a little bit. So Erin's kind of unpacked some of the changes. What kind of food comes to mind? It's an interesting one. You know, is it your favorite food? Caramel slice, pizza,
A lasagna with layers.
or is it something just full of vegetables that seems like a Brussels sprout?
Something smelly. It is.
Oh, an onion. It's got many layers.
Many layers. Yeah,
Many layers.
Tacos.
Absolutely. Tacos is coming up hot there.
Bread. Plain. Yeah.
Plain.
Staple.
That's you. And why did you pick a grilled cheese sandwich visually?
Yeah.
With this,
Yeah.
love it. So if people didn't hear online, visually the grilled cheese sandwich pulls apart, the cheese strings go between, which kind of reminds of the visual impact. Awesome, cool. Did anyone in this room pick tacos? Anyone pick tacos? If someone wants to share in the chat that picked tacos was a big hit. So I'd love to hear why tacos. Yeah, I'll get the chat open on mine and we can have a quick squiz. Feel free to justify your. Cool. All right, if you get a chance and you want to justify that, that's cool. But we'll move on. That's a nice little bit of fun there. Okay.
Right. So yeah, this is just re-emphasizing what I said before around the fact that we've completely mapped from the unit syllabus you'll see there on the left to the topics names in the book on the right. So it's basically you'll pick up the book and teach it. Topic 1 through 5, and then 6 through 10 is the topic 1 through 5 of unit 2. So there's nothing, you don't have to look for the topics. You can just jump straight in, you know what unit you're doing. And the kids do too. They know what they're doing now and they know what's coming up next. They know how much left is in the unit that we're doing now. Really clear.
Yeah. And this, to be fair, this wasn't the case for our previous Queensland senior resources, and it's not the case for other resources. We were talking about that earlier. It just makes things simpler, doesn't it, to be able to go, this is the flow without having to try and map your planning and jump around. So I think it's a bare minimum. I think other resources are getting on board with that hopefully as well. But yeah, we definitely wanted to make that a priority.
Yeah. I mentioned lessons before in terms of what we wanted to do to improve the lessons. So I've got one up on the screen there now. And this is from our chapter 9, applications of differential calculus. So the things about our digital product and also our print book. So the lessons that you see here in the digital book are going to be exactly what's printed in the print book. So it's 1-for-1. So you can work either digitally or with print, and the experience is the same. The lessons have an expected structure. So there'll be the bit of theory, the worked examples, which have worked exclusions for all of them, and videos will be there as well. And then obviously the what goes in the box, the magic idea summary. So the expectation is that we've got enough theory there so that students can engage in all the types of questions that are provided, that there are enough worked examples there so that they can engage with the majority of the simple familiar questions from what's there, you know, to get that the chunk of that work that they can really nail those basic skills. And then of course there'll be the videos that are aligned with that so they can watch those questions be done as well. I'm just going to pull up one that's got a exploration.
GeoGebra coming soon. There's actually some like a non-digital one. This one's great. Yeah, this one's good.
Yeah. So where this is the explorations that I was mentioning. So this is those 15-minute chunks of, I'm going to be able to use this, put it up on the board and introduce this topic. I'll be able to slide the sliders. We can have a conversation, or you can have them do that themselves. They all have some guiding questions. They can just come up with questions in small groups. You can feedback. So there's opportunities there for discussion and collaboration. There's opportunities there for lots of conversation. So I'm a really big believer in conversation about mathematics and talking about the mathematics. So we try and introduce as many opportunities as we can for that.
I've had the opportunity with the AC version 9 stuff to run a few of these. I know there's schools doing building thinking classrooms and that kind of approach, and we won't get as much thinking. I think these fit really well with that idea. And I'd actually love to know how much, because people that are already using version 9 and maybe our resource in version 9, what I love about these interactives is not only is there an interactive, but those questions are pre-written and sort of pre-done, and it's a starting point, it's a launching point. Like teachers will extend beyond that, but you've got something there. If anyone uses our resources already in the chat, I'd love to hear, like, you know, yes, I use these, or I didn't know they were there. Anyone in this room kind of use those regularly? Yeah, you use them. Yeah. I think they just kind of provide that launching point, that hook, and a foundational understanding before going in. So that's obviously being extended up.
While they're tasks that we're going to do, and actually use my hands on a bit more engagement with the kids too, they get to play and manipulate things and
exactly.
Yeah.
So Scott was just saying, head of maths here, that that they use it as a part of their portfolio work. The investigations are the other element of that, which we could sort of talk about too. But so you can sort of see from the general layout, again, if you're familiar with AC version 9 stuff, all of the great stuff about it is carrying forward. If you're not familiar, I hope you like what you see.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to talk about is in terms of structure. So within this chapter 9, which we know applies to topic 9, and it's a direct correlation. So all of the outcomes that are all the dot points, the curriculum dot points for chapter 9 are covered within that, and you can get highlight over them there. So this is part of that particular dot point. So all of the outcomes are easily identifiable. So and you're able to search for them as well. So you can see, what are all the different subtopics that will cover that particular outcome? Sorry, my internet's all of a sudden slow. There we are. So you can see all of the dot points that are covered. But also over here, and when you look at the chapter, so this is chapter 9, there are 5 sections. You'll recall that in the syllabus that's provided by the QCA, they provide recommended teaching hours for each of the units. So our goal for all of these is to make sure that we have 80% of the number of subtopics of the number of recommended teaching hours. So for example, if it says recommended 10 hours, we will have at least 8 subtopics there. The reason we do that is because in our model, and we know that lots of schools teach in lots of different ways, but we sort of had to pick a lane in terms of how do we optimize the product that we're trying to write a textbook for. And so that optimized product sort of is, generally speaking, and I keep saying that because it's not at all how I would teach, but it's basically like a 15-minute sort of explicit instruction, a few examples, the rest of the lesson, 30 minutes, consolidation in class, do the rest for homework. So all of our lessons are designed for about an hour's worth of work. So when we say this topic might be about, I can't remember exactly, but it's certainly going to be a little bit, maybe it's 6 or 7 hours, and so we've got 5 subtopics here. The investigations count as 2 because they're a bit rich. They need time to reflect and come back. So in terms of planning, you could instantly look at this book and go, there's 5 lessons there, and also an investigation that I may choose to do or may not. You may run some other project-based activity instead. So we want to try and make that as easy as possible to scaffold in. There are 5 lessons. That's 5 lessons worth of work. That's really simple. So in terms of the questions then that follow on from that, our question sets are definitely more than you would do in the half hour, because we want to have a few questions that they can still also do for homework, and we want to have a few extra that they could also do as revision for the exam. So all of our question sets are written for a standard student to take about an hour to do. So you keep that in mind as well when you're sort of scheduling. So we've got each of the subtopics is about an hour, a bit under for a lesson, and then we've got an hour's worth of work for the students. So what they do in class, what they do for homework, and what they do pre-exam. And that is expected. That is the same structure we use for all of our 7 to 10 series, and all the same structure that we use for the 11 and 12. So we've got really good feedback on it helping teachers to write their plans.
Yeah, and I think that's something certainly I felt was kind of a bit unique. Like sometimes you look at a textbook and you don't know how long things are going to take until you've done it. But having that kind of, structure in place that gives you an idea is, I think, really useful.
Yeah.
Is
there anything else you want to touch on about the lessons before we focus on questions?
No, I think we covered it all really well. are there any questions about it here? There's nothing on the chat, so all good. Not at this point. All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Actually, sorry, just
Yeah.
assigning the lessons.
Yes.
When you put an assigned task together, can you still assign a lesson or the practice? Like, can you assign a lesson so that they will get interactive?
Yes, you can. So in terms of assigning, in terms of like moving into digital practice there, yeah, you can click on assign task and the options, it should pop up. You've got show other task types. And so, yes, you can assign that lesson. Yeah, you click show other task types. The other thing that does work actually is just copying that URL and sharing that URL takes them directly to that
You can
lesson.
put it straight into your own LMS
So
or unit plans or
That's even easier. So assigning the lesson will obviously give them a tile when they log into Mathspace.
They have to log in.
They have to log in. But sharing that, it kind of takes them straight there, whether they're logged in or not. They can click on that link and it will get them to log in if they're not and take them straight there. Without them even needing to look at their dashboard. So you've got flexibility there. And then of course, you can get the kids to navigate to the textbook and navigate themselves, take a bit of ownership, but that can be a challenge. So sometimes it's easier to share the link. But yeah, I'll talk about some ideas around that as we go. But yeah, no, definitely you can assign any of that, tasks, the worksheets and the lessons.
Any of the components. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the structure of the book, how we want to make that predictable, how we want to make that helpful as possible. So we've got the topic structure, that each subtopic is about a lesson and that all of the outcomes are covered. The lessons we've spoken about how we try and make them as succinct as possible, the full work solutions and the videos that correspond with them. Okay, so moving on to the question sections. Might jump back here. So certainly something that was necessary because Queensland is different to the other states, and so the books need to represent that, is the simple, familiar, complex, familiar, and complex, unfamiliar questioning. So we group all of our worksheets into those for the general and up courses, and for the essential, I'll talk about how we do that slightly differently. And we do focus, so the syllabus has the 60-20-20 split for simple, familiar, complex, familiar, and complex, unfamiliar. And so we do represent that in the balance in our content as well. So if it's not in every single subtopic, which we strive to be, it's definitely over the entire topic. You'll see that there's that balance there. So sometimes it's harder to get that complex, unfamiliar on the very first subtopic in the unit because there's not much they can do that's necessarily complex, but certainly by the end there is when you can tie everything together. So that is something that's there and that's also expected. We've got that really good balance between tech and tech active. So you'll see on the screen there's little icons. So they'll appear in the print book in terms of where the tech active content is. And obviously we want to balance over the entire topic for that as well. But there are some sections that are just going to be more tech heavy because you need to do the high powered calculations that way. And there are obviously some that are more tech free because you want that to develop the basic algebraic skills.
So am I correct in thinking that the external exams would be just tech active now? Moving forward, isn't that the case? The tech free, tech active differentiation. Oh.
Is
that true? I'm not aware of that.
Wasn't that
Across the board?
Let me double check.
Yeah.
But I thought the exams had changed.
Yeah, interesting.
I know there was a bigger change to the assessment than there was to, so yeah, I actually,
Yeah, let me double check.
Yeah, that'd be great to know. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, definitely.
Because that will inform, I mean, what we will be doing obviously is doing exam revision type like topic tests that are kind of more designed to fit the exam style.
That's right.
These questions are grouped by SFC, FCU, and that's never been the case in exams. Like you've never sort of categorized, like the kids don't actually, they can tell if they're trained well, but
we just want to make sure that we're providing in the worksheets, in the actual textbook, enough practice that enables them to do all the things.
But
Oh,
no,
that's
thank you
fine.
for That's awesome.
That's a carry on through from the 7 to 10. So whilst in the 7 to 10 curriculum, it doesn't state that it's necessary. There are some things where calculators will be required, and we didn't want teachers to be caught off guard that there were questions there that were a bit more complex. So we definitely labelled the questions in that regard that way, so that, you know, oh, well, that it'll be too hard to do this by hand. I should definitely use a calculator. The question classification, I've already mentioned the 60, 20, 20. We've also made sure that the questions that are in those specific groups relate to the outcomes that they assess. So you'll remember that the simple familiar are only for objectives 1, 2, and 3. So that's on the left there. The, you know, the recall, the use math language, the communicate math language, those sorts of things. So the questions that we have in the simple familiar category will address those 3 objectives. And similarly for the complex unfamiliar, which are just the latter 3, the 4, 5, 6, and the complex familiar, that bridge in the middle, obviously crosses all of those. So the way that we word the questions and the types of words that we use and the types of things that they do in those sections will reflect those objectives. And then, of course, we just need to remember that, like, complex familiar is sort of in that A grades sort of student bit. You've got the complex familiar, you know, which is where you've got the C and B students. So when doing all of this, we're making sure that we're at that breadth and that we're trying to write complex familiar, unfamiliar questions that can be started by everybody, but those who are definitely that A-level student can complete. We want to try and make sure that the content is approachable and gives everyone feels like they can have a go. That's, you know, part of our Mathspace ethos for sure. It's a bit, yes.
Just looking at the chat, there's a bit of conversation around the exam stuff. So
Just one 90-minute exam, tech active.
Yeah.
One 90-minute.
IA3.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
That's actually great.
Yeah.
Erin was
Just looking at the EA now
Yeah, yeah.
to see if
Yeah.
there's anything
I don't think that will change anything for how we've mapped the questions, because we certainly know as teachers that there are skills that the students should be developing to do by hand. So we need to make sure that they can do the surds and the algebra and all those sorts of things.
Just
Yeah.
looking at the EA now.
Yes.
The EA
Yeah,
is 2 papers.
Yeah.
One is tech free and the other one.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
tech.
yeah.
So
you
still there.
still need to prepare them in an external situation, which is interesting that the internal general would be tech
Yes.
active. Yeah.
Yeah.
Methods and specialists were the only ones that ever had the
Yeah,
distinguished
so the
thing.
EA is tech free paper,
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the IA.
the IAs don't.
Yeah.
Which is super
Active, yeah.
interesting, right? Because we want to prepare them as best as possible for the EAs. So we still need that practice. So obviously having that in the practice sets is important.
Yeah.
Whether we, yeah, I mean, for our practice exams with the QCAA
Yeah,
questions,
yeah. It'll reflect
it'll
that. That's right.
reflect that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to acknowledge Rebecca was also chatting on here, just so everyone here also knows, the new syllabus still says exams must provide opportunities
Yeah.
for both, but the exams are shorter, so it's more likely a lot of schools may opt to not separate questions. Some schools already
Yeah.
sort of just have a single thing, but indicate individual questions that
So
require.
certainly my team, in the way that we approach the questions, is to try and make sure that by the end of the topic, students can achieve the outcomes, and that they've done that by understanding along the way. So if they've had to do that by engaging in by hand algebraic practice for manipulating surds, so that later on they can understand what the calculus is saying and they get an answer, then I think that's really beneficial. So yeah, I don't think that changes too much about our worksheets, but it'll certainly guide what we do when we do get to the exams. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The essentials course is a little bit different. I'll touch on that before we do some examples. The reason I bring that up is because the way that the outcomes are written, you'll see at the bottom there, I've got that silly thing there for the people in the room. Some of the dot points in the syllabus have that bracketed complex term, and complex questions have to include complex outcomes. So you can't have complex questions on any of the other stuff there that's identified as a simple outcome. And so that means that when we've got in our book a subtopic that is only mapped to some of those simple familiar outcome dot points, we don't have a complex section, because that's not how that section would be assessed, and it's not reasonable to do so. So there's a good example of that, actually. I'll just jump to it here. Thanks for moving that in my way.
Sorry.
I will just show this very quickly, and then I'll hand over to Alex to show some specific questions examples. So this is our essentials course. It'll be released and available as draft in a week or two, actually. So I just thought I'd show you what I mean by this question types for this essentials course with regards to the simple familiar. So this particular first one here, this first outcome, this first subtopic is just on classify data and identify outliers. And that is mapped to a classify data and identify outliers. And all three of those are just simple content material. And so the question section for that is all just simple familiar. But as then the sets progress, we introduce that complex outcome as a layer to the other outcomes that are there, so that we can start introducing the complex type questioning at the bottom. And there's not a lot of them, but there is certainly that balance over the entire topics to still get that 80-10-10. Yeah. So just wanted to really highlight that course is different. Some people don't know that. Some people have stuck in a methods lane for however many years, but certainly to know that we've handled that essentials course in the way that it was intended is really, really important.
Yeah. When Erin first was sort of telling me about the extra work that went into essentials, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was like, methods and physics, that's my lane.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really distinct. And obviously it doesn't make sense to just have like a blanket approach to all subjects. It's tailored to each specific need.
So anyway, when you open up a book and you think, oh, there's no complex here, that will be why, because there's not meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And the 80-10-10 split is different as well, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back to the methods for you. I can do it here.
back to my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Cool. So is that
that's
pretty much
good. Yeah,
covered all of that?
That's the structure of the books. Yeah.
Great. So I wanted to, there's one more Slido. This is the last one, because I wanted to use the last bit of this session, and we'll wind up in approximately 10 minutes. But obviously my passion and for using Mathspace is on the digital side. So I want to sort of talk about that and show a couple of things that I think are exciting. I'm pulling out an old graph that from way back back in 2020 when I was using it in the classroom that I want to resurface. I don't know if anyone here has seen it. Some people may have seen it online if you've seen me talk about it. But I want to just go through a couple of key strategies. So yeah, to begin with, thanks for starting to put your responses in there. I'm really keen to see like a bit of and I'm sure there's going to be a big spread here. And let me acknowledge this spread isn't just because of willingness of teachers necessarily. This is, we've got people from all over Queensland here. So some schools, we are stuck on the chisel with the stone tablets. No one's put that yet though, so that's good. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Okay, so it looks like
we shouldn't really brush over that. Reliability of internet is actually a really big concern for schools, and we really know that, which is exactly why we make sure that our print book matches the digital product 1-to-1. So the worksheets, the lessons, it's all the same. So it's really easy to navigate to. Yeah, you've always got a backup if the internet fails you.
Yeah, and we talked about this when we first did our AC version 9 and launched our 7-to-10 textbooks, and we, like everyone at Mathspace, had a different reason for why they thought that would be a good idea. Our CEO 3 years ago thought that text was a dead medium and everything would be digital, but I for one is super glad that we've got both, because sometimes you need it, right? Sometimes kids are misusing the device. Just shut their device, here's a textbook, or they're just not charged, or the internet's not working. Having that ability to go seamlessly between the two is super important. So I'm super excited that we've got it. But it looks like most people are saying balance, which is great. And then obviously we've got people on this. I'd love to talk to the people that make TikTok dances. I didn't think I wasn't expecting that one to get too many responses. That's the extreme end. You have done? Yeah. Awesome. Actually, there are some schools down on the south side that I think Yeronga State High. There's probably no one in this meeting, but they do a lot of dance and you know, in
Yeah.
cases where it breaks down language barriers, it can actually be a really
Yeah.
cool strategy.
Oh, and there's a lot of research that shows if you connect physical actions
Yeah.
to things that you're learning, then it helps with recall. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. So good to see some TikTok dances out there
Yeah.
as well. Good to see that no one is quite on the stone tablet stage, although
Sometimes
of
you are,
course,
yeah.
sometimes we are. All right, so let's jump in. So in terms of digital practice, like I said, I'm going to start by reflecting all the way back to 2020, that horrible year that it was. Do any of us want to remember that? But as we know, there was rapid move to online resources. So this is the first time I used Mathspace. That's 4 years ago. Basically, I used it as a supplement. The resource I had at the time, the textbook I had, the digital things weren't up to scratch, and I sort of found Mathspace. It was free. The team at Mathspace were giving out free things for COVID. All companies were, I basically sort of went to my kids and said, "Hey, this is not mandatory because of the situation we're in, but I'm going to assign some weekly tasks, and you know, just use it if you want to. I'll assign work from our text as well." But the data that I can get from this is obviously going to be great. So that's kind of how I kind of pitched it. And I sort of recognized early on, and if people aren't familiar with Mathspace, but most people, well, people here are, the hints and the videos and the lessons and the ability for students to kind of navigate through those different supports as they're doing the questions was great. So I said to my kids, like, you know, use the hints, watch the video, read the lesson. This is a poster that I've shared with other schools. If I share this with you guys, you've probably seen this, you guys here. But then I wanted kids to skip steps. I actually think that's important. If they've used all the support, they've collaborated at that point, ask the teacher, ask the person next to you, like don't preclude that. And then if you still start, skip the step because it'll tell you the answer and you can apply that on the next question. So that's how I kind of approached it. What was super interesting was when after 6-week period, not a long time, it's 23 method students, so not a huge sample size to be fair, but the way that I implemented it and the way I kind of pitched it as like really an optional resource meant that I got this full spread. Now I've sort of talked to other schools since, early days, 2021, when I was working with Mathspace, and other schools liked this idea and tried to replicate it. But what I typically found was that schools would, I think, just get the top end of this graph. Because what I found that this is basically a really nice logarithmic trend. And so if you don't have that kind of students in your cohort that are using it, not using it at all, like, you know, I gave my kids that option in the context of what we were doing. So I had that full spread. But if you're all of your students are doing a bare minimum, you're only going to see the top of that curve. So it will look flatter if you try to get this data. That's what I found when I've replicated in other schools. But it became really, really clear that, you know, an R-squared value of 0.66 as a physics person, that's terrible, but social scientists apparently 0.5 is a strong correlation. So I'm happy with that.
We're in the education space now. Yeah.
The education space.
Yeah.
So 0.66 is actually quite strong.
Yeah. There's a lot of variability.
There's a lot of variability. It's human behavior and so forth. So so that's what convinced me, and that was in the context of methods. And so from that and from all of that, I sort of decided to, you know, obviously go and work at Mathspace. And the thing I think was super valuable, I've added some extra slides, but do they not update?
No, you have to escape.
Escape and then go again. All right, cool. There we go. There should be some, there we go. Great. The thing that I think is super valuable is the kids being able to look at the textbook. So we were talking before about assigning lessons to kids, and it's very easy for kids to basically never leave their dashboard, right? And I think we should be assigning stuff. Like, I'm not saying teachers shouldn't assign things. I think it's paramount that we do. I think custom tasks are super important. I'm going to talk about that. But I also think kids should be encouraged to go here. And I know some of your kids were doing that. And basically, when they go in here and they can see their level, this is what I found my kids were doing. So the kids at the top of that curve, the kids that were doing, you know, basically they get 10 points for a correct question. So we're talking 300, 400 questions in a 6-week period. I did not assign that many. I'm not that cruel. I assigned about 20 questions each week. So the total number of questions I would have assigned would have been around 100. So that's kind of where this bulk of students is. But those top students that kind of went and did extra, at first I was like, where are you getting these extra questions from? You're doing so many questions. Where are these coming from? And they were going to the textbook, and being able to use this as a revision tool, I think is particularly important in senior. And now that we have all of this lining up with the exact syllabus sort of sequence, even more useful. So basically the students, you know, in 7 to 10, I talk about skills a lot and I advocate for that. But when we get to senior, we really should be, year 11 might want to brush up on their prior knowledge a little bit there. But really the textbook is the syllabus, and they should be basically trying to get at least proficient, which is this. Mastered is a bonus. I had to work hard to get that mastered star on the simplifying search. So you know, that's a top kid there. And the questions do get quite challenging. And I want to sort of go through a couple of those questions now. So this is kind of where students can go. They can review the lesson. They can start an adaptive task at any time without waiting for the teacher to do it, which is super good.
3 fingers.
3 fingers.
Yeah.
Here we go. So there's a couple of questions in particular. Oh no, why have I done this to myself? I am too tired. Couple of questions in particular that I wanted to sort of, I guess, go through and have a quick look in terms of how students can use this as their independent work resource, but in the context of 11 methods. And I know that the AI hints have been used by people here, maybe some people in the chat. It's getting better. And so I wanted to sort of use an opportunity to show that. So I can ask for my first hint. The first hint is going to sort of like give me, yeah, cool, let's move that. Give me like a bit of an idea what square factor. Okay, that's a little bit helpful. I think I can do this. All of your normal keyboard shortcuts work. They can go down here and sort of pick it, but you can see type SQRT and that works. So that's what I'm used to.
And when you get to the senior stuff, you know, if you're in a section on differentiation, there'll be differentiation tools that they can choose there. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we can type that out. And what are we going to get? 2 squared times 10a. And so obviously we get our feedback. We have a new hint. Now, the other thing is that the videos are kind of there too. There's been a big increase in the number of videos, particularly in 7 to 10. We're going to carry that through.
I believe it
more or
is,
less
yeah.
all the way through. So every question kind of has, if the hints are too wordy, the kids can basically use a video that the numbers are different, but they can use that to
The great thing about the videos is that they're done by teachers, and they talk about, oh, how will we approach this? It's just the way that we instruct the team is, imagine you're standing behind the kid in the classroom. What are you going to get them to do next? Like, how are you going to get them to start? So where there are questions that might just use formulas, we first talk about what is it that we're doing? What formula do we need? Oh, we're doing conditional probability. So we try and have that little layer of conceptual understanding before they get into the question.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go to the next step. Oh, why am I going delete? The Mac is throwing me off.
Yeah.
Square root 10a. And then I'll go, do you have like a...
No.
No, the Macs don't have
It's
that.
an unnecessary button.
Okay. All right, we'll go there. All right, so we can do the next step. But this is what I wanted to sort of really, so what if we do this? Now obviously that's wrong. And I was playing with this. We'll see what it does. What did I do wrong in that step? And
Not to us back.
instead of adding the coefficients, you should subtract them
Yeah.
because the original. So it's smart enough, and it's getting better and better. And so this is a prompt that's been played with quite a lot. Where we're heading. So we kind of have, and you would have seen the difference here. So we found in general, Mathspace has done hints for years. We found in general that as a first and second hint, our pre-programmed hints are actually better than AI. So these are kind of pre-programmed hints that were sort of built in. Each step has that. The kids ask for the hint and they're getting that pre-programmed hint, but they still have the option to talk, and the AI is getting better, and we're playing with the prompts to the point where you can pick up those misconceptions, which is more helpful than just a pre-programmed hint, because depending on what the kid's done, there's context. So there's certain prompts that get really good responses here, and the team's basically thinking of using, like if a kid just goes, what's wrong? Sometimes it'll work, sometimes that's not enough of a prompt. But if we can pick the best prompt that's going to give the best response most consistently, and a kid makes a mistake like this, and we just have something pop up as a button going, get help with this step. And then it's kind of automatically writing the ideal prompt for the kid, but then giving the response that's going to be suitable to that. So that's kind of where we're heading. We've been playing around a lot with it, and basically I'm excited. It's getting better and better.
Yeah, it fits in really nicely with our right help at the right time, because we've done this step by step and that automatic and that instant feedback since the beginning. But often they would do that, they would get it wrong, and they're like, why? If they can't see what it is that they've done wrong, especially when the calculations get pretty long, it can be frustrating. So being able to take it that next step and have something be able to identify and explain to them where they went wrong, really helpful. Gets them back on track much quicker.
Yeah. Now there was another question, but I don't think I'll do it for the sake of time. But I was going to, the other thing that I was going to showcase, which has been around for a little while now, is that automatic feedback if they don't have the right communication. So they put in 23 and the answer should be X equals 23. It picks up, you've got the 23. And it automatically says like, hey, just rewrite it as X equals 23. And it's kind of giving them, so we're not lowering the standard in communication, but we're trying to reduce frustration. That it's always the bugbear, and it's something hard to do in maths, in digital.
And that's even more important when we get to the syllabus, the senior stuff, because the calculations are more involved. There's a whole lot more going on. So we want to reduce that friction. Yeah. So we'll get this right just so that I feel good about myself. And there we go. I've finished that question. Hooray. So that's the first piece, is that obviously students using that as a review. The other piece I wanted to talk about really quick, this comes from a primary school. So again, I've shared this with a few different people now, but I think this has huge implications for all education levels. I think primary schools in particular obviously have a little bit more freedom in their scheduling to be able to sort of like do testing in the times that they want to. But basically this school, a shout out to Shayla Park State School, I've worked with them. They started working with Mathspace in 2020 as well. So, but they have 3 tests every single Friday. I think at minimum we should be doing maybe 2 tests. The third one may not work as much in a secondary context, but basically EDI is explicit direct instruction. So they have a pre-explicit direct instruction test and a post-explicit direct instruction, so pre and post testing. And then the post-glow test, that's Great Learning Our Way. That's a system they have. That's basically the pre-test is assessing for the week coming, the post-test assesses the week that's just been, and the glow test assessed from 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's like a cycle review.
It's a cycle. And so they're doing lots of assessment. And I said, are the kids feeling over-assessed? Now, we know moving towards like a portfolio of work that it actually works really well if we chunk it up and sort of use it. But the reason I particularly like the pre and post test idea, and the reason I wanted to share it here, is you get this breakdown of the questions, as we know, with the post test. As a pre-test, you can actually use it to flip your learning. Because if we think about all that support, the videos, the hints, and everything that's built into those questions, if I target with like 5 specific questions and I do that as a pre-test, and maybe that's just a homework task, and they're doing those 5 to 10 questions, it's probably going to be closer to 10 questions in a secondary context, and especially for senior, but they're doing those questions for homework as pre-learning. With the new sort of ability to retry questions, there's no excuse for them to get any red crosses at all, or even yellow. So they should all be green if they put effort in. And so the pre-test becomes like a flipped learning sort of situation, and really a measure of effort more than anything else. You will see, like when you look at it and you look at individual kids, you go, oh, they retried all these questions. So you get an indication from that like they struggled, like they had to retry them, but at least they retried them. And then you'll have some kids that were lazy that didn't bother retrying them, and they're just all yellow or red, some of them. If you wanted to, you could reassign and really make their life terrible. But what's really useful is you do reassign that exact test a week later and you turn the hints off. And that's kind of what you guys use for your regular assessment, but I don't know if you do the pre-test bit. So the benefit is that you've got that kind of like learning opportunity for them first, where they are, basically measure of effort. And then we're assessing on that. Some schools do the first, like the pre-test is actually a larger set. You might have 20, 25 questions, and then you just take a subset of that. The numbers are different each time. So obviously it's really easy to reassign, but I think that cyclic data
Mm.
is super valuable. And so my vision for how this kind of really fits into the senior space is obviously, you know, we can talk about how it groups the kids there with when I sort of look at each question, I can see which kids got it correct, incorrect, and so on. That's good data. But ultimately, there's a reassigning, but I'm mindful of time. But ultimately, the kids should be doing this independently and sort of going, I need to at least hit proficient on all these things if I'm going to be successful in terms of digital stuff. You've got the practice, the worksheets, which you absolutely have to do as well, that have the cognitive verbs and the classification is really clear.
Yeah.
So that's probably something that you do in class time more often than not. But then as teachers, if we go, well, these are the core skills that I actually want data coming in on regularly, having that pre-test with the hints on, that's your pre-learning, and then just going, I'm going to reassign that to see if it's stuck. I think it's a really simple but super effective strategy. And you could sort of debate, like, we're talking formative assessment here. Some schools, when they do like the big set and then they take a subset, some schools do use that as a percentage thing, and that is a part of the portfolio work. But when we're talking about just formative assessment, I just want to know, did they put the effort into the learning to begin with, and then has it stuck? And it seems like such a simple sort of step to do. And with all of the step-by-step and the digital stuff, obviously, I think Mathspace is well placed to kind of be a really good support there. So that's what I'm excited about going into the senior stuff as well, in terms of how teachers can use that to assign questions. Are there any sort of additional thoughts or comments to that? Is that something that, like, is that, I know that you guys in this room kind of, and on the chat, please add anything, but I know that you guys already use tasks really well. Has that added like anything additional in terms of the thinking of how that, what that looks like, what it means?
I hadn't thought about using this as a pre-test.
Yeah, hadn't thought of the pre-test, hadn't thought of.
Well, I like the below part, I go with the 2 where we go and actually see what
Because that's really going to help them get ready for their exams, right? Like, how do you remember? Like, I know you know what we did today, but do you know what we did last week? Yeah.
So with the fixed learning model, the idea would be to assign them like as their homework before it's even smaller, assign the task, the lesson, go through it, ask some questions, then teach it, then assess later, or
Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can approach that. That would certainly be one. There are some flip models that only do the actual sort of let's work together on the questions, let's problem solve that, and you know, you can read the lesson in your own time. Yeah, refer back to that, watch the worked example videos when that problem comes up. Yeah.
I guess it was a light bulb moment for me, because when I did flipped learning, and I know people at this school do flipped learning really well. I used Joel Speranza's videos, shout out to Joel Speranza, I guess, and basically sort of went like, here's the content that I want them to do and watch a video, and then we'll do all the questions in class, right? But how do you measure that they've done that work? And like, it's a culture thing. It takes time to sort of set that up and actually getting them to do it. Number one, half of them don't regularly. And so that you've got this big battle with the flipped learning approach. I love the theory of like, let's spend more time on the quality questions. But it was a light bulb moment for me to sort of go like that pre-test with the support on. That is flipped learning, because the videos are built right into the questions.
Every question
Has a video, every question has the hints, and again, like, they can retry it. So they make a mistake, they stuff it up. I want you to get green ticks for every single one of these questions. Like, that's your homework. There's 10 questions. That's your pre-learning. I get the data very clearly on which questions you did and didn't attempt there. And I expect green ticks. And if I don't see green ticks, that's a measure of a lack of effort more than anything. Because just if you didn't get the green tick first, go retry, get the new numbers, go again. Is that not going to be a more effective pre-learning tool than just going watch a video? Because they're actively engaging.
Yeah.
And they're having to not only watch the video, but then apply it right there in that same box. Oh, I made a mistake. Okay, retry, correct my error. So that's like, it was a light bulb moment for me to go like, that's actually really good flipped learning, as opposed to not knocking anyone that does like watch the video thing. But I just found it was really hard to get buy-in from all kids, or it's really hard to hold them accountable to that was probably more the issue. Yeah. 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 Sorry, volume.
Oh, no, just because the audience wouldn't have heard the comment.
Oh, no, that's all going through yours. So
Yeah.
they're hearing.
No,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Can you just?
Oh, yeah, okay, so that's what I found with flip learning before. It was very difficult in maths to really have the kids buy in to a lot. It's worked a lot easier, or it's worked better in science, I think, for me.
Yeah.
In biology than it has for maths, but
Yeah.
this sounds promising.
Yeah. Worth dipping the toe in again. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah.
Dan, do you have any questions online for us?
Yes, there was one from very early on when you showed that great graphic of kind of what was in and what was out of all the courses.
Yeah.
Alex will probably recognize the name. Jay Vans Chalkwick, MCC, asked if this could be shared with us so that we
Oh,
can
absolutely. I can do that. No worries. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's not a secret. It's not in-house knowledge. I'm happy to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was easily shareable or not.
Yeah.
Great. So there we go. I think that was it. I think someone asked earlier if the textbooks would have fully worked solutions. I think Alex answered that in the chat. That
Will do. Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
So every set of questions, fully work solutions. So
Yeah, and obviously those questions in the interactive question sets for the adaptive custom tasks, they've got the work solution
yes.
product as well. Yeah.
Um,
Brooke just asking, what did the yellow box indicate on the graphic?
New content.
New content. There you go.
Yeah.
oh, there is some new content.
It's very small amount. There's one
I didn't
topic in essentials and then some specialist topics. Yeah.
Specialist.
What are those new topics out of
Oh,
curiosity?
see, that's a great question. Give me 1 second. I'll find it.
Testing the Zoom feature here.
Yeah, I did that a long time ago. So let me just Queensland Figma.
Any other questions from them?
Questions, guys?
Someone's also asking, what were the blue boxes again, as a reminder, in that graphic?
Yes, I can do that. The blue ones. Oh, the blue ones are just the topic names. So the blue ones are just the topic names.
By topic name.
Okay. And then the
chapters.
orange is what are in those topics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which are now chapters for us.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, chapters. And
Yeah,
sections.
so our language is kind of topics is like, chapter 1, that's a
Right.
topic.
So
And
what
then
is it
we
called?
call them subtopics would be 1.01, 1.02 that we call them subtopics. That's the
Yeah,
language that
that's
we've
the one.
always used. But I guess in a textbook context, you'd say chapter and what would you call the?
There we go. We've got converting units
Exercises.
of measure and essential maths.
Okay.
Counting techniques, combinatorics, the differential equations.
Is that new for specialists?
Didn't map
Differential.
over.
Yeah, right.
It's just my mapping is that it's not that the topic was never mentioned, just that the way all the dot points of the topic have changed. Yeah, changed enough for us to have to use different content. Changed enough for us to have to write it from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah. And the red is gone. So obviously we know in methods we've got, the arithmetic sequences are gone. Yeah,
So
they're all
good.
gone. It frees up and gave us a bit of space, which is nice. There was some red ones over here somewhere. Reading and interpreting graphs from general. Maths, but they've been doing that since grade 7, so sure. And then obviously that rearrangement in specialist over here. A bit of rearrangement in terms of the way these things are held, done over here in specialist. So
I just feel so privileged to have someone like Erin managing all of those little subtle changes
Yeah,
for us
yeah.
to sort of like be able to provide the content
Yeah.
that's aligned.
the mapping about knowing where things have moved to is useful, because if you've already got existing resources, you'll you can just readjust it. Yeah.
Mm.
That's it for the online questions. Alex, I'll put your email in the chat in case any virtual attendees want to reach out to you with any questions that they might have if they wake up at 4 a.m. like Erin tomorrow morning and think, oh, I should have asked that question. So,
I'll try and answer by at least 9 a.m. if I can.
5:30.
But yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks Dan for
Yeah,
hosting
thank
on
you
that
for
end.
hosting.
Thank you everyone here for coming along. And yeah, I'm looking forward to what everyone thinks with a bit of a deep dive into that 11 methods book that you've all got access to. So, and again, if anyone online does not have access to Mathspace yet, email me and we can get you that copy of that book.
Yeah, and any and all feedback, once you start getting into that method stuff, feel free.
Yeah, of course, because it is still a draft, you will see like some of those explorations will say coming soon, videos will say coming soon.
Yeah.
All of that is obviously not in its final state, but I think the questions, the worksheet questions, are looking. I'm really happy with. The lesson content is pretty much locked.
Yeah, there's a question there about other books. We'll have essentials digitally available in the next, definitely by the end of 2 weeks, maybe earlier. So reach out to Alex and he'd be able to share that book with your school if you're interested in that at that time.
And there's actually a fair bit of 12 methods that's done.
Oh, yes, true.
Which we're not going to work anymore on because we'll prioritize the year 11 books. So we probably won't release that, but early next year we can probably be showing you what 12 methods look like.
But the content's pretty much in a good state. We know the scaffolding, we know the structure, the questions are 90% of the way there. So
the team's done a great job there, but the big priority is going to be a specialist and general maths. Like methods is pretty much done. Essential is very close to done, and so we just beavering away on specialist and general to get it all ready for the start of next year. So it's good.
Are we still looking for any contractors to assist with the creation of specialist content? Yeah,
so Mathspace are always happy to talk to people who are interested to share our ethos. So if you're a passionate writer and you think you have something to contribute, then we're always happy to talk about that. No, so a lot of the people we have at the moment are teachers and they do Mathspace writing alongside because they're passionate about helping make the product better. So yeah.
And they don't have young kids anymore.
Not many of them do, that's correct.
One thing. My wife is not going to be writing anything.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close off the webinar. Thanks for everyone virtually for attending, and thank you, Erin and Alex, for obviously making this available online to those of us who weren't able to come to Aviation State High today. And yeah, we've got a recording now that we can share with anyone, obviously, who wasn't able to make it today either.
Thanks so much, Dan. See you later.
Bye.